David, it's that time again.
Yes, it is, Dave. It's time for another walk down memory lane here on Stupid Gen X Tricks, which I'll stop referring to as the show for people who used to be cool out of deference to your delicate sensibilities, if you'll be so kind as to tell the good people who we are and what the hell this is.
I would be delighted, David. We are two guys who've been friends since way back in the dark ages of 1992.
Hard to imagine.
Yes. Geezers talking about being geezers is definitely the way to going viral, I think, don't you?
Clearly, it's proven to be the case so far, so...
Yes, well, anyway, back then we met working in politics, and nowadays we are just trying to get away from politics, at least for an hour or so, and instead talk about the culture we grew up with and where our generation is now and all that kind of stuff.
Beautifully put, Dave. And our rabid followers will know that we've been talking every other episode, doing a deep dive or moderately deep dive or a little bit shallow dive sometimes into individual years from our long ago youth. And the next one up in the rotation is 1979. And what a year. I mean, I was just thinking about right before we started here, like major world historical events, tons of stuff happening in the cultural world. I feel like for us as people, or at least maybe just me as a person, just starting to like come into years that I felt like not just a little kid, but really experiencing the world. So let's just jump right into talking about two big developments that would shape culture really for years to come before we get into everything else. And the first one is the Sony Walkman, which was introduced in 1979, at first just in Japan. Dave, walk us down memory lane of when this thing entered your life and what you remember about it.
Yeah, I mean, the Walkman hit like a shot, I think, for all across youth culture. And, in some ways even more so than the iPod would a generation later, which I think was a big deal and certainly blew up, but it blew up more slowly, I feel like. But I don't know for sure. But anyway, I can't remember the first mention of it or what the day I heard about a Walkman or any of that. I just recall that they were coming and people had them and I didn't, and I wanted one. My strongest memory is not that year. It's a few years later when I went abroad with my parents. We were in London and I had this new Walkman. It was a Sony. It was red.
Cool.
Yeah, it was very cool. And I just remember going off in London all by myself for big chunks of the trip, and I had the Talk Talk album, It's My Life, as the prominent tape of that visit. And so even to this day, I can put Talk Talk on and I'm transported to teenage London, walking through the London Zoo, taking pictures. I think it was the first time I ever took an artsy photo, more or less. There might have been one a few years earlier, but of, some
by artsy, you mean naked or...
Yeah, naked animal photos. Yeah. That's always been a turn on. Yes, they were indeed animals that lacked clothing, and I did take their pictures. So years later, I did have a human who asked me to do the same thing, and I had to defer, but and say no.
I'm still a little bitter about that, actually. But it's amazing how an album can just get associated with with a memory like that. It's awesome. I have to say, I have definitely the same memory of not having a Walkman right away when they got introduced, and really wanting one and being jealous of all the people who had them. But then I have to admit that when I got it, I used it a fair amount, I think, for the first year or two, but I never really loved it, and had kind of the same experience with the iPod when it came up, which is just I didn't like the Walkman headphones, although I like them better than the earbuds, which I really hate. And it makes me very uncomfortable to be walking around or doing something where I need to have awareness around me and have earphones on and be listening to music. I feel like I'm going to get hit by a bus or something, and I've never been able to quite get over that feeling.
Well, like you can get over things through immersion. So perhaps what you should do
Get hit by a
work
bus
like,
and
well, no, just like, I always marveled at the insanity of like bike delivery guys who have AirPods on
yeah.
and while they're in the middle of traffic. So maybe you could do that for a few days and just break that spell that, that it's all danger.
Become a bike delivery guy or just walk around with headphones on?
I mean, you get on a bike, put on AirPods, and drive through traffic for a couple of days. That's what I do.
All right, I'll see what I can do. I'd have to go.
You don't even have to deliver anything.
That's good because I don't even own a bike. But
that's terrible.
I've also never liked bicycling, to be honest with you. But we're just off on a whole other tangent. And I
might have to kick you out of our generation. You don't like Walkmans. You don't like to ride a bike. Did you like big wheels? Oh no, you didn't like your big wheel, right? You thought it was underwhelming.
Yeah, pretty much.
You spent a lifetime being underwhelmed, haven't you?
Certainly have. I think that is a bit of a theme. But one thing in doing a little bit of prep for this, and it's really a very little prep, read about the Walkman that I thought was actually really cool is that the innovation in it was like they didn't really develop any new technology when they created the Walkman. They took existing smallish portable tape, what they called portable tape recorders, which were like, the size of a book or something. And they took out the recording part of it and they took out the internal speaker. And all of a sudden it's small enough to fit the purpose that people really wanted it for. And I just like that. I think it feels very punk rock, right? That the way to innovate is to take out instead of putting in. And I think that's cool.
It is cool, and I didn't know that. That's a great bit of trivia. Funny enough, in the last year, I have purchased a portable cassette player, but this one has like the old-fashioned earphone plug.
Yeah.
But also, it allows me to input and then record to a memory card. My old mixtapes.
Oh, cool.
So it's become my method of transfer, and it has embedded in it a speaker, even though it's still small, so that I can play it back and see if it's where it needs to be without having to have headphones on.
That is very awesome.
It is. And I think in your script for this, you made an astute point that I will now verbalize and sort of pretend like it's my idea, which is that this was the beginning of a sort of personal music experience, highly personalized in that it's in your own headphones and yet you're mobile and out and about, which is really cool. But it's also the part of like becoming isolated from the world, as you pointed out. Like, you didn't like it in part because you didn't have a full sense of what was around you necessarily if you're hearing music. But the other thing is it also eliminates the opportunity for conversation with those around you, which, has gone into free fall over the years.
Yeah, and which sometimes is a goal, right? Like where I have found headphone music listening very useful and good, and I do is like if I'm traveling by myself, sitting on a plane or on a train or whatever, and don't want to talk to people, the sort of universal signal of, sorry, I've got headphones in, definitely works and helps you avoid strangers. Although I will say I've also had really fun and interesting conversations with strangers in those settings. So it's a double-edged sword.
Like everything.
Yeah.
Oh, you were going to talk about something.
Yeah. I mean, the other
different.
Big culture development in 79 that I think wasn't noticed as much as a big thing at the time. But in hindsight, the launches of two American institutions, ESPN and C-SPAN, that we now, in hindsight, I think you can say like this is the start of the cable TV era, even though it was something that was kind of building gradually and continued to build gradually over the next couple of years. But the thing that those two channels have in common, I think, is, this sort of, you're making this philosophical leap from TV as a limited resource, right, where people have to make decisions about you've got, and right in the old days, it wasn't even 24 hours a day. It was, 20 hours a day of 3 or 4 channels. And so people are getting to gatekeep what's on and what's not, to now we're going to have 24 hours a day of whatever sports we can figure out to put on there. And we're going to have 24 hours a day of people yakking in Congress if you want to watch that. And, then very rapidly after that, 24 hours a day of animal stuff and 24 hours a day of music videos for a few years before it turned into other stuff. All these channels that there's just endless amounts of television available to be watched. And now, of course, with streaming, there's even more. And it really changes the nature of what that medium is.
It does. And, for a while there, the plenty of media never felt like it added up to better media. Yeah. But I feel like that changed with like streaming services and like Netflix and other services starting to really program different types of content. But I don't know. That's probably a conversation for another day. I'm glad you mentioned C-SPAN because that was riveting from the get-go. And
it really
the concept of C-SPAN, it's a weird thing, C-SPAN, but at least America got to understand, if they managed to tune to the channel, that most people speaking in Congress were speaking to an empty room.
Well, that took a few years. And it's actually a great story of, because when C-SPAN first originated, they would only have the camera on the person who was speaking. And there was this sort of pretense of there's a room full of people. And Newt Gingrich, who was then a junior, backbench congressman from Georgia, was the one who really started to use this and would would deliver these long speeches and would even pretend to be interacting with Democrats and saying like, see, they don't have an answer or whatever. And so Tip O'Neill, who was the Speaker of the House, ordered the cameras, because the cameras are controlled by the House itself, to pan out and show that he was just talking to an empty room and there was nobody there. And
That's right.
But it did change the culture of Congress completely, I think. That all of a sudden stuff that was, it was always in public, but hardly anybody was paying any attention to it, now be on TV where, it's not like people were sitting there riveted across the country, but some number of people are. Early ESPN. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say that C-SPAN really peaked in the late 90s when our listener, David Sanders, appeared on Washington Week as the head of the Arkansas Young Republicans.
Wow.
Looking mighty dapper, as he always had and continues to, and perhaps a tad nervous at the outset as a kid on national television, but he held his own, defending your boy Newt Gingrich.
I did that show at one point too in that era.
Did you?
I did, yeah. It was fun.
On whose behalf?
At the time, I was working for this thing called the Communitarian Network, which the less said about that, the better. But it was as a former White House staffer kind of thing, this just young guy around town. Much less fascinating than early ESPN, which I just have memories of, because at the time, obviously, you got to fill 24 hours a day of sports programming, and they didn't have rights to a ton of stuff. So they would just fill it with I just remember Australian rules football seemed like it was on when we finally got cable all the time. And the guys with the cool flags, doing that. And then college boxing was a big thing that they used to show.
College boxing?
College boxing, believe it or not. And guess what
Who has that?
I think smaller schools, I think the military academies are very big in the college boxing, or were very big in the college boxing world.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Pretend that you don't have the script in front of you and guess what the first event that they showed was.
I cannot even imagine.
It was the well acted, Dave. Really, that was you got to the truth of the moment. The emotional truth. The debut broadcast was the World Series of Professional Slow Pitch Softball.
That's outstanding. Yeah. And it blew up from there.
It certainly did.
Yeah. Now there's professional women's softball. Which our friend Jonathan has had a big role in.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Let's move on, unless you've got something more on cable in your life.
Nah, I mean, it was all about not having things for
Yeah.
me as a youth. So we didn't have cable for a while, and all my friends got cable while I continued to not have cable. And then we got cable finally, and it was locked away, and I could watch a little bit of it. Whatever.
So now let's move on and get back to the regular order, as they would say on C-SPAN. And normally we start off with our own little lives. So what was happening in the life of young Dave Anderson in 1979? I can't read that. Michigan State something.
It says Michigan State, #1 national NCAA champions.
Woo-hoo.
That's what happened in 1979, David. Magic Johnson happened in 1979. Good Lord. How could you? I saw your script that didn't even include that.
You know,
it's a good thing I can look at your script and add things and come up with my own stuff, because what in the world?
It was Michigan. Was that the Magic Bird game, the greatest game ever played?
It's the greatest.
Yeah.
You want to talk about,
I have to imagine
the first episode of Sports Center, but
yeah, I had that in my thoughts as something to talk about, and I forgot to include it. I apologize.
You did it just so I could have this performative moment of fake anger.
Well, and now we can also talk about your real anger, even though we talked about it on a previous episode, that you had a strange experience of watching that game, Dave. Or am I just bringing up too much bad memory?
Oh, yes. Have we not talked about this on air?
We did. We talked about it on the sports episode, but not too many people saw or heard that one, so you could go ahead and repeat it.
Yeah. So according to my mother, who ruled, the house rules, as with many moms in many houses, the national championship game, the most iconic basketball game of my lifetime, and many others, and the most watched basketball game of all time, was not watched by me because it was, quote, past my bedtime. And so I was sent to bed, even though I wanted to watch the game. And then the next day in class, the teacher asked the question, well, who watched the game? And every hand shot up but mine, even all the girls who didn't care about sports. And then everyone turned and looked at me like, what? What is wrong with you? And I just sat there in silent, angry shame. And I have never forgiven my parents for it. And Mom even allowed me to attend an NCAA tournament one year by myself out of town if I promised never to harass her about 79 again. And I said, okay. And then I kept on harassing her.
Yeah, I feel like once you've got something like that to hold over your parents, you don't let go of it. You just can't.
No. I mean, hopefully very few kids have to experience such a iconic moment withheld from them by and the other thing is, this wasn't the YouTube era, so it wasn't like, it was on TV again, soon after, or you could pull it up. You couldn't. I literally didn't see that game in its entirety until someone started selling a VHS copy of it in 2003, and I rushed to order it, and then I was able to watch it. I didn't see it for 30 years or 25 years.
I will say I have a 79 memory. I think it was 79 of something that I held over my parents like that for years. That became a kind of a thing that one of the exciting things that happened in my life in 1979 was I had my appendix removed, which is not really that exciting, but was in the hospital for a week because that's what it took in those days.
Did you meet your first chiropractor? Did you have
I didn't.
That too?
No, but what happened was my parents were scheduled to be going on vacation by themselves, which was, I think, maybe even the only time they ever did that. And they were, and it was getting ready. And so they left the day I got home from the hospital, basically, and left me with my grandparents. And I was very bitter about that at the time and continued to bring it up for years afterwards, mostly as a joke in my mind. But decades and decades later, after my mom had spent lots of time being very helpful to me and my family and in our lives, and I made some joke about it, and she got really angry and was like, I think the statute of limitations is up on that finally, and I was like, okay, I will let it go. I will let it go.
But the statute of limitations on emotional trauma is does not exist, of course.
Yeah.
But I guess, but using it as a battering ram had finally run its course.
I guess so.
At least you were a nice enough son to let it be so. I don't think I would have done that.
Although now I'm talking about it on a podcast, so there's that. But she's dead, so it's fine.
But she's dead, so it's fine. That should be our slogan. Okay. Well, so should we move on to some of the actual news events of the year?
Yeah, and two big things to me that leap out from the year that had that were very big news at the time and that really have lasting reverberations and continue to be felt in meaningful ways geopolitically today. The Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, which obviously kicked off the war there, which led fairly directly to the overthrow of the Soviet, or the downfall of the Soviet government, a decade later, to the rise of, fundamentalist terrorism in the world. I mean, right, bin Laden came directly out of that fight, all of that. And then also in that same year, the overthrow of the Shah and the establishment of the fundamentalist theocracy there, and the end of the year, the seizing of the American embassy and the taking of the hostages, which again, I think is something that, just continues to shape the way we look at the world and to shape real facts in the world that are unspooling constantly. So it was a real watershed year in that regard.
And not in a good way.
Not in a good way, no, but major nonetheless.
Yeah, so the forces of old didn't like the forces of new and got violent about it. I wonder what that's like. Yeah, well, it's been those were huge moments, even for a little kid. I mean, I was 9 in 1979. I didn't really understand what it all meant, but I did understand that it was dominating conversations, and especially I remember on my local radio station there was a lot of discussion of Iran on rock radio among the show hosts, and then I don't know if it was 79 or 80, but do you happen to recall that someone recorded a takeoff on the Beach Boys song Barbara Ann?
Bomb Iran? Yes. Yes, I think it was Weird Al, wasn't it? Was it?
I don't think so. It's possible, but I mean, he's more joyous than that.
Yeah.
That was I don't think so.
No. Okay.
But I could be wrong. We'll check that. We'll put up a caption and we'll do a citation. We'll do our normal deep research and post-production that we've become known for.
Exactly.
Yes. Well, another thing, of course, was 3 Mile Island, and my parents, being liberal activists that they were, did not like nukes, and that only fueled their passion, especially my mom. But I've been thinking about 3 Mile Island recently because I have a friend who's a very sophisticated journalist in the world of renewables, and he and I have been talking about nuclear as an energy source in America, and how we're just so far behind Europe in large part because of the decades-long reverberations from and wrong assumptions taken from 3 Mile Island. But, going back to what it was like in the time, I just remember it being talked about a lot at breakfast with my parents. And, before it was resolved, the anxiety of well, if it blew up, where would the radiation travel to? Would it get to Michigan? There was theorizing in the papers about it, and I don't remember. I can't imagine it would have affected us, but
it was in
there was definitely anxiety.
Eastern Pennsylvania, or central Pennsylvania, I guess. It's a long way from central Michigan, but
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that makes sense, but it also can be airborne, right? Radiation can float, can it?
Yeah, but not, I mean, unless it was a massive amount, it wouldn't have an impact over that kind of distance.
Yeah, and I guess maybe it would travel east, not west, if it was floating, right?
I guess so. This is the kind of deep scientific analysis that people are looking for out of a couple of liberal arts majors.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I'm sure people have their notepads out on this part of the conversation. Woo.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Let's move on to Happy
On a
Meals.
much lighter note, McDonald's did introduce the Happy Meal in 1979. Not a big part of your life at the time, I'm guessing, not of mine either. But
Well, more than other things.
right.
But yes, it was there, and I wanted it. It's like cable.
And I feel like it was even when it came out, and we were not big McDonald's eaters, but we would have McDonald's occasionally, and I feel like it was marketed as being for younger kids than us, and I think, if you had been seen in middle school with a Happy Meal, people would have scoffed at you pretty seriously.
Again, I was 9.
Yeah.
So no, I wanted it.
All right. Well, there you
I
go.
wanted the Happy Meal. I wanted the toy.
Yeah.
I wanted all those good things.
All right. Well,
I got very few of them, of course.
I know, Dave. It's okay. You've managed to come out of it all right.
I managed to eat a lot of McDonald's in the meantime to make up for it.
But anyway, also that year, Britain made Margaret Thatcher prime minister, the main result of which was a lot of British bands making a lot of really good angry music over the next decade or so. Also, just going down the list here, as a resident of Pittsburgh, I'm honor bound to note, Dave, that both the Steelers and the Pirates won championships that year. I actually remember that World Series pretty well against the Orioles, that it was a big comeback, and it was the whole Willie Stargell "We Are Family" team, which seemed pretty cool at the time. And I also have to note, I remember the Montreal Canadiens beat the New York Rangers in the Stanley Cup final that year, which I remember primarily because I wasn't then, and I'm not now, much of a hockey fan, but that my brother's bar mitzvah happened during the middle of the Stanley Cup playoff, and all of our Canadian cousins were visiting. And at some point during the weekend, everybody was at our house, and a bunch of the kids were watching the game on TV, and the Montreal kids were like making fun of the American announcers for whatever reason, in a way that we got really like angry at them about. I can't remember even what it was about. Yeah, but it was like, you're in our country now, damn it. But
so you sent them back to the border.
They showed us, yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
I love that that story and that picture of Canadian relatives making fun of American relatives because of announcers.
Yeah.
Speaking of announcers, we are now at the end of the 70s, and we haven't once mentioned Howard Cosell. I don't know how that happened.
How did that happen? He was a major figure in the world, like, and everybody would do the imitation. Right. I'll even venture to do it right here, right now, Dave. Give me an event, and I'll give you a little something.
Well, I think you should definitely do Howard Cosell talking about Tsar Nicholas and
no. That's your line. I'm not. Yeah. You're not getting out.
No. That's what I'm waiting on.
You're not.
You gave it to. Come on.
You are not
come
getting
on.
All right.
I don't think our listeners know what you're resisting. Please explain it to them.
No, I'm not.
In Howard Cosell's voice.
I'm not going to do that. I'm instead going to note that this is Howard Cosell at Madison Square Garden, where the Montreal Canadiens delivering a beatdown to our beloved New York Rangers. How is that?
That does not sound like Howard Cosell.
No. It did in my head. No.
No, I'm going to move on to Tsar Nicholas II and his Romanov family, which were discovered and exhumed, and let the record show that David only included this so he could get me to pronounce some stuff that is hard to pronounce. So here goes. I did not look up pronunciations in advance of this. Their remains were discovered and exhumed near the city that was known as Sverdlovsk, but is now called Yekaterinburg, which we are talking about because of these, because Dave just wanted to torture me. Nobody cares that they found those remains, David. Nobody cares, but perhaps they got some entertainment out of my tortured pronunciations.
That was the intent. And finally, in what I guess will be the second to last edition of the famous Gen Xers born during this year segment, famous Gen Xers born in 1979 include Jordan Peele, Natasha Lyonne, Kourtney Kardashian, Jason Momoa, and Pink. And we are proud to count almost all of them as part of our tribe, I think.
Yes, a great lot, and a special shout out to Jordan Peele because he's a genius.
Yes, he is.
We're proud of them, and we are also, of course, very proud of our audience members who go ahead and like, rate, and subscribe our show, or who hire drone shows or rent skywriting planes, or get hot air balloons to do very slow motion skywriting. All those things to help publicize these rapidly aging old men during these cold winter days.
I don't think that.
Speak for yourself.
I don't think that you can.
I'm not rapidly aging.
I don't think that you can skywrite from a balloon. I don't think that would be. That seems like it would be very difficult. But anyway, please do.
Where there's a will, there's a way, David. Where there's a will, there's a way.
All right. Well, please do any of those things. Follow our social media, leave a review, and maybe best of all, tell your friends and get them to check us out. It would really mean a lot.
All right, well, we will be back in a moment with the lowdown on movies, music, and all of that. Maddie, what are you doing?
I'm listening to music from a cassette tape.
Which requires a Bluetooth connection? Like for airplanes now?
Yeah.
What do you think of the song you're hearing?
It's not my favorite.
It's not? She's listening to Lush. Yeah, now she's rewinding. Is it a different song?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of the new song?
I don't like it. How do you know when to stop?
You don't. You have to guess.
It's real nice. It's not a real one. He's fooled you. It's got a speaker. It's got Bluetooth. But it opens like a real one does.
You have to stop it. Yeah, stop it and take it out. See if you can figure it out.
You're gonna laugh at me.
What do you think?
It's pretty inconvenient, but hey, I mean, that's all y'all had.
It was thrilling to us when we could do this. Because before, all you could do is put like a record on a record player and listen through speakers that were installed at your house, and then you leave the house and you had no music. And then they put these in cars.
Yeah. I don't know. Y'all kind of lived in the dark ages, I guess.
We kind of did.
All right, well, we've returned. We're going to plow ahead now, and let's start with music. I'm going to run through the best-selling albums list, which is an interesting mix. You lead off with The Wall by Pink Floyd, which is a very fine piece of music that I remember people being really into at the time.
We were like fourth grade, Mrs. Swoboda. I remember we planned it a couple days out, and the song "The Wall" with or "Another Brick in the Wall." Is that the name of the track?
I think
whatever it is.
I think the song is just
track.
called "The Wall," but yeah, it's the lyric is "Another Brick in the Wall." Yeah.
But the key lyric is "We don't need no education,"
right?
And we thought it would be hilarious to play that in class when our teacher was not expecting it, because we had a little like 45 record player in the classroom that had its own speaker. And so someone brought in the 45 of the single, and just before recess ended, they rushed in, got it on, and kept an eye on the hallway for when she was coming down the hall. And then just before she came in, they dropped the needle, as you did in those days, and it started playing, and she gave us a like very funny kids. Like she wasn't properly angry.
I have a moment that is just coming back to me right now that I remember at one point when my kids were little, and we sat down to dinner, and it was some kind of meat dish. I don't know what it was. And my son wouldn't eat it. He generally did not like to eat things that were not chicken nuggets at the time. And there was some kind of pudding that we also were going to be having for dessert. And he kept saying he wanted, and it was just like this perfect confluence of events where I got to say, like, how can you have any pudding if you won't eat your meat? And my wife and I like cracked up and were laughing hysterically. And the kids were just like, what was funny about that? I don't get it.
That's outstanding. Nicely done. I wish I could have seen that.
Yeah.
And for those who don't know the reference, that's also a Pink Floyd lyric from that album.
Exactly. After Pink Floyd, you had
Breakfast in America, which I love.
Which, all right, well, somebody has to. You had Michael Jackson's first solo album, Bee Gees, Eagles, Zeppelin, AC/DC, Donna Summer, Rod Stewart. I don't find any of these all that interesting. Christopher Cross. A little under the top 10 was the thing that leapt out at me as something that I remembered being very big at the time and like ubiquitous in people's homes among my friends and family, which was the Cheap Trick at Budokan album, which I loved at the time.
Let me just note, and by the way, I think there may be some masses gathering at your door to protest your quick diss of like a bunch of iconic bands like AC/DC or Michael Jackson or Led Zeppelin.
I don't mean to diss any of them. It was just like none of these were like their defining albums. I don't think. And
Off the Wall was that year.
Well, we talked about
that was a big deal, that record.
Oh yeah.
No, Off the Wall.
Yeah. Fine.
It's a big record.
That's fine. Yeah, I'm not gonna argue the point.
Michael Jackson.
I just didn't have anything interesting to say about it, so I was eliding quickly over it. And now you're calling out my failing, Dave. Thanks very much. Really appreciate it. Good
I'm here to call out all your failings, David. But you mentioned Cheap Trick at Budokan, and because you saw fit to say Cheap Trick was better than all those other bands, but Budokan is also the name of the peak, very best Walkman that Sony ever produced. It was the Sony Budokan.
Oh, interesting.
And it was this gorgeous like design, super pared down and simple, really high quality recording. It was the first Walkman that came with like big cool headphones, not like the foamy ones, and it had bass boost, which no one had ever seen before. It had its own button along the bottom of the thing. There was no like transparent glass. It was like completely black. The whole thing just had little bits of color on it. It was so great. I still have mine. It's in Michigan, but it was like, it cost like $400 in like 1985 or whenever it was that Walkman came out. But that was the pinnacle of Walkman, and it's still like pretty collectible online.
That is a great fact. I did not know that.
Yeah. Sony Budokan.
Just to call out a couple other things from that year, album that I certainly did not discover myself until a few years later, but that I rank and I think a lot of people rank as, you know, one of the best albums ever made by human beings on planet Earth. And Dave, if you naysay this one, I'm going to be so angry at you. It's London Calling.
Christopher Cross?
London Calling by The Clash, which is just so I was this morning getting ready for the show. I was listening to it to get myself pumped up. And my initial plan was like, I'll listen to a couple of tracks off this and then I'll listen to something else. And it's just like every song that came up was like, oh, I forgot how good this one is. And I just had to keep listening to the whole thing. It is such an album of passion and talent. And they're starting at that point to get more into using the studio. And so there's like horns on it and other instruments that aren't them, but they still manage to keep that punk rock urgency about it. It's, you know, got starting to have some of the reggae feel that they incorporated more and more as they went on, and got influenced by that. Lyrically incisive in places, just an amazing double album with no bad songs on it.
I'm going to let you have this one, David. It just never spoke to me. I'd never again, you were older also.
Yeah, although I didn't listen to it at the time. I think I didn't listen to it until high school, but yeah.
Okay, I'm going to jump forward a little bit because I had a bit of a thought around this, which is you and I like go back and forth, and we feel like our sensibilities are somewhat aligned, but then we have these like extreme disagreements around certain iconic acts, whether it's Bruce Springsteen, Elvis Costello, or whatever. And I think, like, to me, I took that, given what you were saying about this record, I took it out this morning and listened to it. I had never listened to the whole double record. I didn't have time to listen to all of it today. But I wasn't feeling it. And, I don't feel Prince either, and I respect Prince. So I can go that far with you. I'm not going to, say it's not great music, but it just doesn't speak to me. And to me, like The Cure's first record, which came out that year, Three Imaginary Boys, is I put that on this morning, and it was way more interesting to me. And it has some of their very best music. It also has some forgettable tracks, so I can't say that every single thing on it is great.
But it is good. I mean, I like The Cure. I like that record. But to your point, it does not speak to me nearly as much as The Clash does, and that's partially a matter of taste. It's partially a matter of nostalgia, right? Of I've probably listened to London Calling certainly in the hundreds of times in my life, and a lot of defining moments in my life in high school and college. And so that, carries its own power when you listen to it again at this age.
Yeah, that absolutely would be a critical part of the experience. There's another part that I also think about, which is that, I never responded to punk. There are tracks by The Clash that I think are great, but as an act that feels like, speaks to me, it isn't. And I was thinking about that versus The Cure, which totally speaks to me, and so many iconic songs. Also, a lot of filler in the last couple decades. But the other thing is stylistic, right? And The Cure is not aggressive in the way that The Clash is, right? Clash comes out of a punk tradition, and The Cure is more like there's darkness in both bands, but in The Cure it manifests in an atmospheric way, whereas with a band like The Clash it manifests in an aggressive way and like an angry way. And I was having some back and forth with a friend of mine about The Clash yesterday, my friend David, because he had gone to see The Clash when we were little, and I remain impressed that he had the wherewithal to do it. I thought he'd seen them on the Sandinista tour, but it turned out he'd seen them on the Combat Rock tour, and they were he was 13 and in there.
That would have been 83, 84, right? That would have been,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so which is going to see The Clash by yourself as a 13-year-old is pretty rock and roll.
Yeah, definitely.
Punk rock. But he and I were having some back and forth about one of the first concerts we went to together, maybe the first concert we went to together, which was UB40 and Midnight Oil. And I wasn't into either band.
That's a great double bill.
I remember, yeah, it was. And I just got dragged along. I didn't know either of them. And someone's like, well, UB40 is the one that did Red, Red Wine. I'm like, okay. So at the show, I wasn't that into UB40, but I definitely was not that into Midnight Oil at the time. And I think part of it was it was a really aggressive band in its style. And I forgot Peter something, the lead singer, was flailing around.
Later, a member of the Australian Senate.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's right. But anyway, my friend David was he loved, because I only talk to people with my name. Yeah. He was saying how Midnight Oil really spoke to him, and he got a Midnight Oil T-shirt, and again, it was that aggressiveness. I guess I'm just, I'm just a Quaker through and through. What can I say?
Yeah, it's funny because I love both those bands. I love Midnight Oil, and a lot of music that I like for its anger specifically, and which is funny. And I've never really thought about this, but I'm not an aggressive person. I am not an angry person most of the time, and I'm not a person who, even when I am angry, likes to express that anger very much. I I just constitutionally don't like to yell. I don't, but like music that lets that out is like an outlet for me, I guess, maybe then, because I love music that is bitter, that is angry, that snarls, and particularly that finds the sort of joy in that, which I think both Midnight Oil and the Clash do. The Ramones are maybe a great expression of that. Although they're not really angry, they're just loud.
Yeah. I mean, in a way, it's not so different from. I've always been fascinated by the fact that humans love movies about criminals,
Right?
right? So maybe it's just giving voice to the sneaky part of you try to keep managed.
Yeah. Well, this is an interesting discussion, Dave, that we did not plan on, but nicely done.
Yeah.
I did think that you would want to talk about the birth of Goth in the year 1979.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Bela Lugosi's Dead, an epic for all time, was recorded by Bauhaus that year. I believe it was their first song, which is a unbelievable start, and very like one of the few songs that is truly long and holds up all throughout it. With I generally feel like once a song is past 5 minutes, it better have a damn good reason to be past 5 minutes. But Bela Lugosi's Dead blows past, I don't know how long it is in the end, 9, 10, 11 minutes. It's long. And of course, Joy Division's Unknown Pleasures came out. I was not into I wasn't into Joy Division at the time because I was 9, but even later, I never gravitated to them the way some of my friends did. I was much more into New Order. But of course, Love Will Tear Us Apart is a classic for all time, and there are other really great Joy Division tracks, although that was not a 79. Gary Newman and Tubeway Army's Our Friends Electric is an amazing song and considered, I think some people consider it like the first truly new wave song. But I don't know. I don't know how you define that. In your script, you mentioned the Knack and My Sharona, which that is not a new wave track. No way. I know it gets lumped in as such, but there's nothing about it.
And it's not.
It's just
it's a pure pop song is what it is,
yeah.
and not a bad one at all. But people, it definitely,
maybe it's
like
they had thin ties or something.
When you read it like people talk about it as like this was the new wave hit, the first big, because it was a number one hit, and it was. But I agree with you. It's not really. Yeah.
Dumb people talk about that.
Yeah.
That's not right. That is wrong.
Yeah.
And of course, to me, Blondie and Heart of Glass, which is the song I really loved of hers, I think that came out that year, and that to me was how I really first experienced new wave. But there's other stuff too. Of course, I already talked about The Cure, Boys Don't Cry. Rock Lobster came out that year. That's a all-time classic. Specials, Message to You, Rudy. Cars, Candy-O. And then outside of my future new wave track, there were some pretty significant songs in other genres. Rapper's Delight being, incredibly important. And
when you talk about like a
hip hop song,
like a milestone moment in pop music development, that is a massive one.
Yeah. And then The Devil Went Down to Georgia, which I don't know what to say about that song. It's a unicorn. It's fun. It's still a fun song.
It's still a fun song. It was ubiquitous at the time. I remember people would sing it. People would like, it was just that song was, everybody loved that with
still
good reason.
Do.
Yeah. And then the Pina Colada song came out that year as well, Dave. Speaking of genre classic hits.
I know you and your when you weren't being angry or listening to angry music, you were listening to yacht rock.
No, it was not a song that I liked at the time or like now, but I always am amused by it. And the guy who did it, whose name escapes me, always gets pointed out as the famous alumni of my wife's high school. So I need to point that out too.
That's probably why it made its way into this episode, isn't it? Because I don't know if it really necessitated all this discussion, but yes. Shout out to, what's the high school?
Clarkstown South, Dave.
In what town?
In West Nyack, New York. But anyway, there was tons of great music that year, and we should get into the disco of it all because, over on the singles charts. It's just domination by dance hits, and some of the, like "I Will Survive" by Gloria Gaynor, another classic that continues to be a hugely popular song. "Le Freak" by Chic, which you hear less at suburban weddings and bar mitzvahs, but I think still.
Wait, Chic, was that Rick James's band before he was Rick James?
Entirely possible. I don't know.
I think I'm gonna use the Google while you look off screen and check that.
But the other thing you had that year, is a lot of hits that very disco influenced by artists that we don't think of as disco artists, like, to your point, like "Heart of Glass" by Blondie, right, which was definitely has a disco beat to it, and that kind of dance floor sound, and the Doobie Brothers, "What a Fool Believes," Rod Stewart's "Do You Think I'm Sexy," which I believe is your personal theme song, Dave.
Yes,
and I'd like to say, my view of disco is like any other genre of music. There's some really good stuff and some really bad stuff and a lot of stuff in between. But there was a huge backlash.
There was a huge backlash. And by the way, filling in the blanks, it was not Rick James, but Nile Rodgers was part of Le Chic. And evidently the song was written about them being denied entry to Studio 54 or something.
Real-time research here on Stupid Gen X tricks. Nicely done, Dave.
It's the magic of the show, the high-level research. It's just incredible.
Yeah.
Okay, so 1979 and "Disco Sucks" was also a reaction to disco. In fact, I've been searching for a photo I took of a young woman sporting a shirt that was vintage to that year that her dad had given her that says in like classic 79 font, "Disco Sucks." I feel like I mentioned that shirt once before and didn't find it that time either.
But those were everywhere. They were like, everywhere that white suburbanites were anyway.
And I feel sure that sentiment was not just white suburbanites. And "Disco Sucks" became a ubiquitous phrase. And then, of course, in Chicago on July 12th, there was an epic moment where the Chicago White Sox partnered with a local radio station to hold what they called Disco Demolition Night. And it was 98-cent admission for people who brought a disco record with them, and between games of a doubleheader with the Detroit Tigers, they were going to put them all in the middle of the field and dynamite them. But shockingly, this did not end up going well. Thousands of fans stormed the field and were lighting things on fire and tearing up grass and everything else, in addition to the damage caused by the explosion itself, which nobody seems to have thought through very well. Dozens of people were injured and arrested, and the second game of the doubleheader had to be canceled and was ultimately declared a forfeit, so the Tigers win. Do you recall all of that?
I definitely remember hearing about it as like a funny story, right? As like, oh, that's crazy. And the White Sox kind of had a reputation for always doing these wacky promotions. And I was fully bought into the "Disco Sucks" thing, definitely, as a what was I? I guess I was an 11-year-old at the time. I can remember kids like walking through the halls of middle school chanting like "Disco sucks, disco." Not that there was anybody to be chanting it at, but it was a thing. And so I think at the time I just thought it was hilarious and stupid that they hadn't thought through that blowing things up on the middle of the field would be a problem. And I take a much darker look at it now, but at the time it was definitely a big deal that I remember hearing about. I mean, you must have, from a Tigers fan perspective, if nothing else, have heard about it at the time.
I mean, I don't really remember it, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know it's in my mind now because I learned about it in the meantime, but I don't remember it from the time, really.
All right, well, then let's just move on to the movies. And I'm going to make you do the commercial hits this time. What do we have?
Okay, Kramer versus Kramer, Amityville Horror, Apocalypse Now, Star Trek the Movie, Alien, Muppet Movie, 10 with Bo Derek. Wow, last episode we were talking about Farrah Fawcett, and we've moved immediately to Bo Derek.
That's the late 70s right there.
That's yes. The Jerk, which I believe was my first rated R movie that I got my dad to bring me to. Moonraker, the James Bond movie, which I think I saw 38 times because I love that movie so much.
Is that the one with Jaws?
Jaws in space.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah.
With with this miss-looking girl or young woman, and it's a classic. And Drax, and a great soundtrack by John Williams, which I have listened to within the last year. I still love that soundtrack. And the China Syndrome, which I never saw. I'm not quite sure why you didn't include Apocalypse Now. That seemed like a notable movie, but I've added it.
No, it was there. It's third on the list, in between Amityville Horror and Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
No, that's because I put it there.
Oh, okay. Yeah. There you go.
I added it. You didn't have it in there.
Oh, that was a mistake. That's my second big omission of this script. But
I know. Like all great podcasts, we talk in great depth about the script. Yes, I'm sure that's the magical spontaneity of it all is what keeps bringing people back. And then Being There, which was an odd one. But really, like, Kramer, what I recall of this group is Kramer versus Kramer as a divorce movie being a box office smash was pretty shocking to the studios and everyone in a way.
Yeah, and I think it was taken at the time as this big cultural moment that, obviously the 70s was the peak of divorce becoming a mainstream phenomenon, and I think was at its height in terms of that's the statistic that people always talk about, that 50% of all marriages end in divorce, is not true today, but I think was true then.
No, I think it's never been true. Mm-hmm. I think it's all, yeah.
The thing I remember most, I didn't see it at the time. I saw it later, and it's a good movie, but that the people who did see it among my classmates were mostly fascinated by the fact that there was some nudity, and that got talked about a fair amount. Which brings up 10, I guess.
I didn't see it.
Which I
couldn't get Dad to bring me to that one.
No, I certainly was not allowed to see it at the time. And I remember it even being a source of some contention between my parents whether they would see it or not. And I've never watched the whole thing. I watched like 20 minutes of it on TV at some point as an adult, and not a good movie at all. I mean, maybe if you watch the whole thing, it is. Just beautiful young woman being naked a lot attracts a lot of people to a movie, I guess, is a lesson that Hollywood certainly figured out.
You're reminding me of something funny from years later, which is I worked for a period of time in high school at a local art house theater. And I remember talking to the guy who booked all our shows about like the preponderance of French movies we were running. And the guy's like, oh, yeah, that's just because all the professors can come have an excuse to see naked women because the French films all had a lot of naked women in them. So it was basically like soft porn for the educated set. Yeah. Who knew?
Who knew? A few movies, one of which you mentioned that is worth calling out, I think, is Being There, which is a brilliant movie. And I remember seeing it with my parents, and it was one of the first movies, that sort of quote unquote serious movies probably that I would have seen. And I remember just actually being fairly blown away by the idea that like, this isn't funny particularly, although it has some humor in it. Has a lot of humor in it actually. And there's no action and there's none of the things that you're usually looking for as a young kid in a movie, but like, wow, this makes me think and is good. And that was a phenomenon that I really remember. On a different note, the In-Laws came out that year, which is one of the funniest movies ever made.
I don't even know it.
Oh my God, you got to go see it. It's Peter Falk and Alan Arkin. It is absolutely hysterical. Go watch it right after we finish recording this. Speaking of funny things, The Life of Brian, the Monty Python film, which is a classic. And we haven't talked about Monty Python either at all on this podcast, which is a huge omission. But they were, for me, and I'm guessing for you, although I don't know this, a major influence that probably started right about this time because the TV show reruns were on PBS, and we used to watch that on Sunday night, and my friends and I would all, learn all the lines and repeat them to each other ad nauseum, and all of it was just great. And then the other movie I love from that year is Breaking Away, which is just an absolute beautiful,
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, incredible film. And ages well, actually.
Yeah.
It still makes me want to go hang out in Bloomington, which I still haven't done to this day.
I have never, maybe we'll meet up there, Dave, and go for a bike ride.
Yes. Can we go 60 miles an hour? Probably only after being hit.
Right.
Didn't he go like that fast in the scene?
I don't know how fast he was going. He was going very, very fast. Yes.
Well, yeah, those are all great movies. And then my favorite filmmaker, Krzysztof Kieslowski, the Polish filmmaker, one of his really essential early films called Camera Buff came out that year. So film nerds who have not seen that can try and track that down on Criterion or something. And a terrible 1941, wasn't that bad John Belushi movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that. It was dumb. And Mad Max, of course, was that year. I loved Black Stallion because I was 9 and it was kind of arty. And then a classic for all time. And I don't know if this story came up when we had our guest Brandon Schmidt on, but he and I had an amazing moment around this next title, which was years later, post-college, late 90s, early 2000s, probably late 90s. We're hanging out at his apartment in Brooklyn. And I said to him, just out of the blue, we were watching football. I'm like, do you remember that movie? Did I tell this story?
No, I don't think so. Because I don't know what you're talking about.
So I just said to him out of the blue, you remember that movie? And Brandon had this funny thing where he liked to, like when you had a rhetorical question, he'd try to answer it in the moment before you filled in the blank. And he goes, Every Which Way But Loose? And I'm like, yes. Like it was the craziest thing. We had never once discussed this movie. There was not a single thing in the plot of this story that had been broached as we had hung out.
Just that you're always thinking about monkeys.
I mean, yeah. Orangutans are usually on my mind, and yeah, especially the boxing ones who were not featured on that first day of ESPN programming. Unfortunately, that would have really gotten a ratings hit. Right?
It definitely would have. As well as potential legal action. All right. Well, should we pivot to TV, or did you have more on film?
No, that's
more
it.
of your art, more of your arty stuff to share with the people.
No art.
All right. Well, in TV, we talked about cable at the top, but the 3 networks obviously were still dominating the picture. And the top-rated show that year was one that had been around for a decade already at that point, and is amazingly enough still on now. I was about to say still going strong, but I'm not sure I would want to say that. I'm talking, of course, about 60 Minutes, whose big innovation in 79 was the introduction of the supposedly funny closing section with the unbearable Andy Rooney, Colgate's most embarrassing alumnus, which I think I actually liked at the time, but got over pretty quickly. Of the top 10, Three's Company, That's Incredible, Alice, MASH, Dallas, Flow.
Love That's Incredible.
The Jeffersons, The Dukes of Hazzard, and One Day at a Time.
Lots of classics in there. Dukes of Hazzard, of course.
Yeah.
I like that Basset Hound, too. It triggered my lifelong love of Basset Hounds, even though I have been advised by the various veterinarians in my life never to own one.
I owned a Basset Hound mix for a number of years, and he was problematic in a number of ways. So there you go.
Well, it's also the end of the era of All in the Family, which was replaced by a poorly regarded spinoff, Archie Bunker's Place.
And then the thing that leaps out at me from the list when I looked at it was, the previous years was just dominated by Happy Days and by spinoffs from Happy Days. And those were all still on in 79, but fell out of the top. And I felt like, that was a group of shows that was really aimed squarely at our demographic of kids our age, and that the shows at this point, with I think the exception of Dukes of Hazzard, even though kids our age were watching all of them, were maybe aimed a little bit more at people a little bit older than us, and even adults.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, again, I don't know that I can really pass judgment as someone who went through that era as a 9-year-old, but in retrospect, certainly did seem that way. Although there was still Little House on the Prairie, Different Strokes, and Love Boat, which were all lots of fun for kids. And of course, in the world of Saturday morning, and then in the world of Saturday morning television, who can forget the introduction of Scooby-Doo's I don't know, was it brother, sibling, cousin,
I think
Scrappy Doo?
I think he was a cousin, but I'm not sure really. I don't know if they
Yeah.
ever really defined the relationship between Scooby and Scrappy. But
Yes, Scrappy Doo. And then, of course, the most important thing that happened on television that year was that JR got shot.
oh, was that year?
It was the cliffhanger.
Wow, that was a huge cultural phenomenon. I mean,
Yep.
I was not a Dallas watcher. Nobody in my family was a Dallas watcher. But it was something that like that summer, right? Everybody was talking about. I think was it that year? I feel like it was 1980 in my head, but everybody was talking about it constantly. I remember like it was big news stories of like predicting who actually shot JR, and it turns out it was Maggie Simpson who did it. So I may be conflating two things.
I don't know what that means.
There was a Simpsons episode where they did a parody of Who Shot Mr. Burns, and it turns out that it was Maggie who did it.
Oh.
But yes.
Yeah. I remember, because you know how you conflate things when you're a kid and confuse everything. And I remember hearing, probably for the first time, the Bob Marley song, I Shot the Sheriff, and wondering if that had something to do with JR being shot. Clearly, it did not.
Did you hear it as a Bob Marley song or as an Eric Clapton song at that point? Probably the latter, I'm guessing.
I don't know.
All right.
Probably Eric Clapton.
Yeah. All right. Well, before we move on here, because we've spent a lot of time, I wanted to add one book note, because 1979 was the publication date of the book version of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which was actually the second version of it. It was a radio play first. But that was just a massive touch point for my high school friends and I. We all read it and the sequels to
Nerdy
it.
boys everywhere.
Multiple times, and like talked about it at enormous length and quoted from it as
before,
often.
During, or after D&D?
Before, during, and after D&D, in fact. Yeah, we were big geeks, and is what I'm trying to say here, and proud of it.
My honey, she plays D&D, but she has never read Hitchhiker's Guide, and I find that confusing.
It seems off somehow.
Yeah.
You've sparked a memory of going to someone's house, or maybe it was people came to my house to play D&D on like a Saturday night as our big excitement, and a couple of people bringing their towels with them, because of course Hitchhiker's Guide teaches you that if you bring a towel with you wherever you go, people will assume that any other item you don't have on you, you've just forgotten, and they're happy to help you with it, but you're a generally responsible person. So
wow. I missed that entirely. That's outstanding.
Yeah.
All right. Well, on that note, I will grab my towel and we can head to break.
All right.
When I eat a York peppermint patty, I get the sensation of being at the top of a cold and wintry mountain, alone.
York peppermint patty, get the sensation.
When I eat a York peppermint patty, I get the sensation of a cool breeze billowing through my hair and across my long white dress. Oh.
York peppermint patty, get the sensation from Peter Paul.
All right, we are back and almost through with this extravaganza of the 70s, but it wouldn't be Stupid Gen X Tricks if we didn't have wormholes. And what are these things, David? According to our definition, anyway.
Dave, this is the part of the show where we each just talk about something that we want to talk about for no particular reason. The premise that we started with is that it's some new bit of information that we've explored this week to share with our friends and family, but you and I both know that that's not always the truth. So just play the awesome theme song and let's get on with it.
Okay, here it comes from Supermassive Posse. All right, well, my wormhole this week is so good. It is of the 70s. It is not of 79. It had actually concluded a couple years earlier, but East Lansing, Michigan, the place of my youth, the place of all kinds of magic in various ways, and of course, Magic Johnson, who won the national championship in 1979, as we talked about at the outset here, and it will not be forgotten. In 1970, the police department received a phone call. There was a complaint that there were a bunch of hippies playing football at a local high school, and I guess the neighbors did not appreciate those hippies being there. So the cops came, and there was a conversation. And can you guess how it ended?
Nuclear warfare.
Not nuclear warfare, far from it. No, what came from it was the hippies challenged the cops to a football game.
That's pretty cool.
They did, and it became they held it. The cops accepted. They held it a few weeks later. It had attendance of 7,000. They turned it into a fundraiser for St. Jude's Hospital and raised a bunch of money. I don't know the exact sum.
Full on tackle football game, or was it touch? Or
yes,
yeah,
yes. The best thing about it though was its title. Can you guess what it was called?
I obviously can't, Dave. So just go ahead and don't make me do that.
It was the Pigs versus the Freaks.
Excellent. I love that the police agreed to that. That's pretty cool.
They did. There's even a low quality documentary about it out there you can search up. But really, I feel that it needs to be redone in better fashion.
I think you're the man to do it.
Not only was it, it's kind of a little dream of mine. So 7,000 people in attendance the first year, but then they decided to keep doing it. They did it for 7 years. Danny Thomas came for a couple of the years. They ended up holding it at Spartan Stadium.
Wow.
Where it had like 35,000 people in attendance. Like it was a massive local phenomenon and really something that deserved international coverage in my book. So
it's a shame. It's a shame that it ended. I mean,
they could probably get it going again.
Yeah. That is pretty cool. Well, my wormhole, Dave, oddly involves the group of geeks who used to play D&D and bring their towels and talk about Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Because past weekend, there was a high school reunion that I did not attend, but a group of my close friends who also did not attend, we had a Zoom call together, which was a wonderful thing. It was actually, I mean, I have had some level of contact with several of these people, but the group of us have not been together in any form in many, many years. And it was great and it was fantastic. But it turned out that one of my close friends who I've known since I was like 5 years old is now a grandfather, which is a little bit disturbing. But even more disturbing was the name that he is called by as a grandfather. And so now I'll turn the tables and see if you can possibly guess what my friend Kurt is known by to his grandchildren.
I'm guessing it's a Hitchhiker's reference, but I don't know.
No, it is not a Hitchhiker's reference at all. He is, for some reason that he couldn't clearly explain, known as Tata to his grandchildren, or grandchild, I think, which we all found very, very funny. But which prompted me anyway to look up the top.
Do you call him bodacious Tata?
We certainly could. It would be extremely appropriate. Anyway, it did prompt me to look up what the most popular grandfather names are, Dave. So I'll just run through the list here. The number one, and this is, I should say, just in America, the number one is Papa, which, number two, Pop or Pop, which I'll say the variation I hear around here a lot is Pap. A lot of people seem to go with that. And then
where's Papa?
Papa or Papa.
No, Papa.
That comes that actually comes in as number 10, Dave. Papa was number 3. Granddad or Granddaddy at number 4. Grampy at number 5. Poppy at number 6. I guess that exists outside of the Bush family. Grandfather at number 7. Abuelo at number 8. And Gramps at number 9. I will just share the best.
What, Grandpa? What about Grandpa?
Grandpa was not on here, actually. Which,
maybe that's the real one, and then everything else is variations.
Maybe. The best grandfather name I know of is someone in my extended family who is known to his grandchildren as Grumpy, which is a great name and a perfect encapsulation of his personality. So it's pretty pretty cool.
I just heard about someone named Grumpy who was a grandfather, but I can't recall who. I don't think it was your relative.
Yeah.
That's outstanding. And I want to encourage this trend of dubiously sourced surveys that you have gotten onto. First the New York Post, and now this high quality national poll.
I think it came up on a Reddit thread when I searched. So that's
you don't say.
I'm doing deep research for these wormholes, Dave.
What was the error rate on this survey?
Plus or minus 98%, I think. Yes.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that is outstandingly brilliant. So now we have to get back to our lives of globe-trotting fun and adventure. But first, what do we have to tell people about the next episode?
Yeah, so the next episode is going to be a little bit different because we're going to be focused more on what Gen X is up to these days in an era when some of us are becoming grandparents and things like that, and we're getting to be old and crabby. We're going to be chatting with author Ken Stern about his new book, which is all about how we can get even older but much less crabby by maintaining lives of learning and social engagement and purpose. So we will explore that and make some dumb jokes along the way because that's how we find purpose, and be back to take it all in with us.
Outstanding. And make sure you have it pop up in your feed by subscribing, which just by itself will add at least 4.5 days to your lifespan, and 100% guaranteed medically proven fact, and just as guaranteed as Dave's surveys.
There you go. Well, now we come to the moment when Dave says good night and good luck, even though it's just early afternoon for us and could be absolutely any time at all for you.
Good night and good luck.